Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr.
I'm sorry,
Chairman.
Senator Padilla was first. Sorry. And then Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to begin, as Senator Coons did, by also agreeing with your goal of addressing the opioid crisis that has claimed far too many lives. It's a crisis that demands urgent and decisive action. But after careful review of the language of the bill before us, I should agree with much of the assessment that Senator Ossoff just articulated. And I agree that it raises important concerns about privacy as well as efficacy. Now, the bill, as I read it, requires tech companies to refer their users directly to the DEA for investigation if they have knowledge of certain prescribed drug transactions happening on their platforms. I think it's important to acknowledge that federal law already imposes a reporting obligation on these companies as it pertains to CSAM. You referenced that in your opening remarks, Mr. Chair. But I understand this requirement, the CSAM reporting, is what inspired the structure of the bill before us. However, the nature of CSAM, I believe, is fundamentally different than the nature of drug crimes, which is what undermines the efficacy of the type of mandated reporting that this bill proposes. When it comes to CSAM, colleagues, when it comes to CSAM, the very online presence of it constitutes a completed crime. When it comes to discussions of controlled and counterfeit substances, context is pretty important. Drawing the line between someone seriously expressing a desire to acquire meth or another counterfeit or a counterfeit substance versus innocent conduct, such as research or ingest, put platforms in the difficult position of having to be subjective as to when they're required to report users. Do we really want to effectively deputize untrained tech companies led by people like Elon Musk to serve as law enforcement? This bill will empower them to disclose people's private data to federal law enforcement without a warrant or oversight, based only on, quote, a reasonable belief that someone is committing an offense. Now, under this bill, companies will face significant liability if they fail to report users, meaning these providers are likely to err on the side of over-reporting and over-referring users to the DEA. And I know balance is difficult, but important. I also want to be clear that these reports can include sensitive personal information, including the content of the user's communications, the content of their communications, not just their identity. I also have significant concerns about the bill's potential impact on encryption. Senator Ossoff and I have discussed this. This bill includes a provision in Section G4 that would make companies liable for failing to report their users if they, quote, deliberately blind themselves of violative conduct on their platforms. And I worry this provision could be read as criminalizing companies that offer encrypted services, as they may be viewed as deliberatively blinding. Now, this committee has spent a lot of time over the years discussing encryption and its importance for all manner of protected activities and marginalized communities, not to mention women seeking reproductive care in a post-Dobbs world. So I think this is yet another issue that we need to consider very carefully before advancing the bill. And I would actually welcome clarification from the sponsors of the bill about whether they intend to capture the use of encryption in this broad way. Let me conclude by saying again, the opioid crisis demands urgent and decisive action. But this bill, as currently drafted, does not, in my opinion, address the root causes of the epidemic and risks eroding are constitutional and statutory privacy protections. Now, for years, our constituents have demanded we force the tech industry to respect their privacy. And now this bill compels and encourages technology companies to erode that privacy. So I can't support the bill as currently drafted, but I'll be paying keen attention to the amendments that are offered, which ones may pass and improve the bill, which ones may not, before taking a final vote. But I wanted to articulate my concerns and hope to be a constructive part of truly addressing this epidemic. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before recognizing Senator Blumenthal, I'd like to make a comment on what's been said by